This is a replica of the Cyrus cylinder. The real thing is a baked cylinder, which currently sits in room 55 of the British Museum in London. And this is the world's first Charter of Human Rights. It's translated into all six official languages of the United Nations, and it provides a framework for the first four articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So many centuries or millennia, even before the Magna Carta, before the Geneva Convention, before all that, we had this cylinder. And the principles declared on the cylinder are freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, racial equality, that no man, no woman should be considered a slave, and that peace and safety are paramount for humanity. And from this foundation was built the arrival at basic human rights that we're entitled to today. The freedom to live free from violence, the freedom to live free from discrimination, to enjoy the highest attainable standard of physical and mental well-being, to be educated, to own property, to vote, and to earn an equal wage. All these are now codified, but their precursor was this cylinder. Not literally this one, but the one which is in the British Museum. Cyrus himself was a great king who lived and created this in the 6th century before Christ, at a time when his kingdom had many diverse beliefs and customs. And he's mentioned in the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. And even despite the patriarchal societies around the world at the time, the women who lived with Cyrus had a very important part to play in his kingdom. His empire, from his mother Mandana to his wife Cassandra Shahbanu to his daughter Atuza, but none more so than one of his greatest commanders, Panthea. She was the leader of his elite immortal soldiers, and she was an equal on the battlefield to any man. And the first of a long line of female commanders which lasted for centuries, all the way 1,000 years later. And why shouldn't it be the same way today for every woman in the country, where Cyrus ruled over 2,500 years ago? Why shouldn't they be free to live, free to love? Why is freedom of expression championed less now than it was over 2,500 years ago? Many centuries later, in the 13th century AD, so 800 years ago, there emerged a poet from the same province as Cyrus the Great called Sa'di Shirazi, and he wrote a book called On the Conduct of Kings. This was a guidebook essentially for the king at the time, and it was advising him on his conduct and how to respect and care for each of his subjects. And within that he writes a book called Bani Adam, which means essentially human beings, and the critical verse has been translated into many different languages, and it's called The Sons or Daughters of Adam, Bani Adam. So when the calamity of time afflicts one limb, the other limbs cannot remain at rest. If thou hast no sympathy for the troubles of others, thou art unworthy to be called by the name of man or woman. So whether 2,500 years ago or 800 years ago or today, we're all humans. We all deserve the freedom to live, to love, to pray, to not pray, to express ourselves, and this has to be protected. And centuries later, in the same country as Cyrus, the same country as Sa'di, a country which has so many diverse ethnicities, languages, customs, faiths and beliefs, we have a constant and violent threat against women's rights and the battle for human rights. And starting from that point, we also have battles to fight for the rights of minorities, the rights of the prisoner, freedom of expression, association, faith, so many human rights which were first codified in the same country. And that's why I invite everyone to stand with the women who are leading this women's movement, this women's revolution, and with all the others who are fighting, the students, the youth, the minority ethnic groups, minority groups of sexual and gender identity, political prisoners, prisoners of faith, and all those who are fighting this battle, not just for one country, but for the history of human rights, the cultural history of human rights. Zan Zendegi Azadi, Women, Life, Freedom.